Towering above a small town in southeast Germany is an impregnable fortress, Colditz Castle. In the Second World War, the Nazis used it as a prison from which there could be no escape. They incarcerated here Allied officers who had repeatedly broken out of other camps. Without realizing it, the Germans created a center of excellence in the art of escaping. 60 years later, the men who got out are going back in to rediscover how they did it. Late on November the 7th, 1940, the first contingent of British prisoners arrived at Colditz. They had been recaptured together after a joint escape from the prison camp at Laufen. Among them was Kenneth Lockwood, a 29-year-old infantry captain.
When you're taken prisoner, the point is that you felt that you could have done more and didn't.
Now 88, Lockwood remembers the night he arrived at Colditz.
We looked up at the castle, looked up at the building. It was grey, the weather was dull, it was depressing. We just wondered what we were coming into.
The only other survivor of that group is Peter Allen, now 82.
On the left here is Harry Elliott, Rupert Barry, Pat Reed, Dick Howe, myself, and Kenneth Lockwood. The conversation we had, it was just escape talk. When you're an officer and you go to your regiment, the CO gives you a lecture that it is the officer's duty to escape, and I suppose that remains in your head.
They brought us in here. They locked us in, and that was that. It really is quite extraordinary. But this, there's no question of it. This is the room.
Over that first winter, the captured elite of the Allied officer class began to arrive at Colditz. Within a year, there would be 40 Poles, another 50 British, 12 Serbs, 60 Dutch, 8 Belgians, and over 60 French.
Voilà. Il manque seulement les German soldiers, hein? Oui. Curieuse. J'ai passé quand même à peu près 2 ans ici. Alors, on a quelques bons souvenirs, mais quand même, we lost our life here.
Legendary French tunneler Bernard Cazamayou is 83. He has not been back to Colditz since he was a prisoner here 58 years ago.
Ça fait quand même quelque chose. When I arrived in February 41, there were a few French officers. I think every French officer chose a British friend and teaching. One day French, one day English. We had plenty of fun. Une bonne ambiance, une bonne ambiance.
In the first few weeks, the prisoners were too hungry and weak to contemplate escape. These were easy days for Colditz security officer Captain Reinhold Eggers. Although not an enthusiastic Nazi, Eggers was a loyal officer of the German army, fair but strict. Eggers wrote a memoir called The German Viewpoint.
The castle was built to be impossible to get into. My job is to make it impossible to get out of. The prisoners are confined to the rooms of the inner courtyard, where the walls are 30 meters high. This will set the limits of their world until the end of the war.
With the arrival of the first Red Cross food parcels at Christmas, the prisoners' spirits picked up. They began to think about how to get over, under or through the castle walls. Their search laid the groundwork for Jock Hamilton Bailey's detailed survey of the castle defences. At its heart was the medieval inner courtyard in which the prisoners were confined. Its walls were up to 3 meters thick, a challenge to any tunneler. Outside this were the battlements rising up to 20 meters out of solid rock. Below these was a double fence of barbed wire. The wire was patrolled by armed sentries day and night. Below the wire, the ground fell away in a sheer drop for 40 meters to the valley floor. At night, a machine gun nest and searchlights covered the exterior. The German High Command believed it was impossible to escape from Colditz. The British officers begged to differ.
As soon as we got settled in after Christmas, we started to look around for escaping and means of escape.
An escape committee was formed. To head it, they selected 31-year-old Pat Reed.
It's an automatic choice, really. You know, if you thought of an idea, you'd go to Pat. And, of course, it was the fact that he was a civil engineer, which was invaluable.
With his engineer's eye, Reed could see beyond the skin of a building to its vents, ducts and drains, its ready-made escape routes. After weeks of careful scrutiny, his gaze alighted on one part of the building. It was the prison shop, known as the canteen, which was run by Lockwood.
Pat Reed came into the canteen, and in front of the counter there was a drain cover. Well, of course, Pat, with his civil engineering, wondered where that led. So obviously the thing to do was to get into the canteen at night. I, as the British canteen officer, I knew where the sergeant put the key.
While another officer distracted the sergeant, Lockwood went to the drawer of his desk.
I had a bit of soap in my pocket. I took an imprint of the key, put the key back in the drawer, and gave the soap to Pat, and a key was made.
An iron bed leg provided the blank from which the canteen key was cut. The key fitted beautifully, enabling Reed to do a full reconnaissance. Once in the canteen, he discovered that the manhole led to a sewer, which went out underneath the exterior walls of the courtyard and ended below a lawn. It offered the chance of a mass British escape. But there was a problem. The lawn was patrolled by a sentry. Two British officers who spoke German had already been softening up one or two of the guards. In exchange for 500 Reichsmarks, one agreed to abandon his post when next on duty outside the canteen. The escape was on. Reed selected 12 officers to take with him. One of them was Lockwood.
I knew that we needed luck, quite a bit of luck too.
The night arranged with their tame sentry was the 29th of May.
We were let into the canteen and we all got into the tunnel.
Walking above the root of the sewer, Lockwood recalls that night.
You see, we had to crawl along it. You couldn't stand up in the thing. We came underneath the window that was here. And then to here. Unfortunately, when Pat pushed up the earth, there was a sentry outside.
The guard they had bribed had double-crossed them.
Pat shouted to all of us who were behind the tunnel, 12 of us behind him, turned around and get out. Of course, we all shot out the other end, and because the Germans had come in the courtyard at the other end, we were sandwiched between the two of them. And of course, we all just looked out and we roared with laughter. And that defeated the Germans. They couldn't understand it at all, why we should laugh. What else could you do?
Eggers was very pleased.
What a haul for us. Our first big success, due entirely to the loyalty of one of our guards.
The canteen escapers would have to be punished. In Nazi Germany, punishment was often lethal. However, Eggers believed in an old-fashioned sense of fair play.
I will never allow you gentlemen to get the better of me. However, I will always observe the Geneva Convention.
Under the terms of the Geneva Convention, escaped POWs were not to be shot. In Colditz, the punishment was up to 3 weeks in solitary confinement. Complex mass escapes often ended in failure, which was why many preferred to act alone. Frenchman Alain Leray, a professional soldier, had been married for less than a month before being taken prisoner. He would try anything to get back to his wife and join the resistance.
I wanted to escape as quickly as possible so that I could return to the fight.
Eh bien, c'est une obligation qui est faite
Anyone holding prisoners of war had to allow them to get some fresh air once every 10 days.
Une fois par tous les 10 jours. Donc les Allemands devaient nous descendre, prendre l'air.
So the Germans had to take us down for a walk in the park, which was within the perimeter of the castle.
Du château. Alors tous les 10 jours, nous descendions en petites colonnes.
So every 10 days, we were marched down this path in a closely guarded column.
Ce bâtiment était un...
We always passed this building, which is where relatives of junior officers used to come and stay, and it was always locked up.
Chaque fois que nous passions, elle était fermée hermétiquement. Et puis, un beau jour, j'ai vu cette porte.
One day, I saw that the door had been left open, and it came to me what I should do.
La lumière qui arrive pour moi.
Once down in the park, Leray resolved to exploit this carelessness. He would make his move on the march back up to the castle.
Si donc arrivé comme ça.
So we came along here, like this, with the column close to the wall. And when it got to here,